Okay, I think that we'll begin. So hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on conversational AI. I'm Bruce Belfiore, CEO and Senior Research Executive at BenchmarkPortal, and I'm joined by Richard Stark and Livio Pugliese of Sponsor Interactive Media. Richard heads up business development for Interactive Media and has many years of experience in designing and deploying enterprise technology solutions. How are you today, Richard?
Great, Bruce. Great to be here with you.
Okay, great. And Livio has many years of experience in telecommunications and customer experience, and is currently the head of North American operations for Interactive Media. Previously with Genesis, he held roles in product management and technology development. Livio, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Bruce, and very happy to be here.
Okay, wonderful. Good to have you guys here. So, conversational AI and related topics are sparking a lot of conversation, plus a lot of confusion in the industry. There are a lot of hopes for better and faster customer experiences, but also some concerns about wasted investments, as well as for the fates of people employed in the contact center field. And we've been at the forefront of research on this subject and have some brand new insights to serve up to you today in terms of what managers in our industry are actually thinking and doing with conversational AI, also called virtual agent technology. I'll use both of these terms during the webinar. We fielded a 1-minute survey on this topic over the last month or so, which got a strong response, which is indicative really of the interest this topic is attracting. So let's define conversational AI as the ability of computer programs to sustain a conversation with humans. For customer service in particular, this means finding the reason for the call, if possible, solving the issue in self-service mode, and otherwise sending the call to the right agent queue with all the collected information so that the call is easier and faster to process. All this with a normal conversation that only asks the customer to use their voice or to type normally if the channel is text-based like email or chat. On a practical level, implementing conversational AI for you as a manager involves providing the words and context that will help the AI machine identify why the customer is calling, called customer intent by those in the AI industry, and the words and phrases that will respond accurately to the customer intent. This involves sitting down with your team and identifying call types, say warranty information, or changing passwords, or following up on an order, or, and tracing that intent through to conclusion by coming up with the words and the phrases that are frequently heard during that type of interaction. Well, for those of you who are familiar with customer experience journey mapping that we've done a lot of, think about that methodology, because a lot of it is used here as well. For conversational AI, you make lists of intents, that is what the customer wants, and map out the journey. Then for each intent, you make a list of key words that help you identify the intent. Then you and your team branch out for each intent and determine drill down words and response phrases that are all associated with the various intents during the course of the interaction. Then, when you guys have done your best, you hand over your lists to people who are experts at using the designer tool. The designer geeks take your lists and words and phrases, and they work their magic with the tool. The machine takes your lists and they start taking interactions under the listening ear of you or your colleagues. And the learning begins as you pilot the tool. So this is a pilot type thing. Inside the tool is a machine brain that learns with each interaction. The tool gets smarter and the service gets better, and the world is a more beautiful place as a result as time goes on. So Richard will give you a quick taste of the technology behind this, but now you have a sense of the basics. Also, for those of you dipping your toes in for the first time, let me introduce the term cognification, which is making its way around the industry, and which means the process of making systems smarter and smarter via artificial intelligence software. Now, it's probably not the prettiest word in the English language, but it does encompass the process of machine learning and continuous improvement. And before we dive into the research, let's keep in mind that the world is getting used to speaking to Alexa and Siri and others like them. So customers today are much more receptive to this kind of technology than they were, say, a decade or so ago. Okay, now on with the results of the study. First thing, we wanted to know if managers really know what conversational AI is. And I've been in conversations where the slightly embarrassed look comes over people's faces when this topic is mentioned. And it's not surprising, given the results we see here. It turns out 4 out of 10 respondents had minimal or no familiarity with the topic. So anyone listening today who signed on to find out what this is all about should not feel badly. You're in very good company. And this is not surprising since technology is evolving very rapidly. However, it's also concerning because it means a lot of managers are not really aware of something that could be transforming their operations and making them more competitive. On the other end of the spectrum, you can see that only 4% they said they were very familiar with this technology, plus 27% said they were quite familiar. So this total of about 30% is probably a proxy for folks who have tried or are trying the technology. And actually, these results conform to another study we conducted a few months ago, which indicated that 29% of a selected group of centers were actually doing some form of virtual agent technology. The study also found that about half of these had been using the technology for less than a year. So this is really recent innovation by and large, both exciting and challenging. And for those who do use it, most are using it for inbound calls, with a minority using it for outbound, for chat, SMS, text, social media, and others. So conversational AI or virtual agent technology, it's sort of like, I don't know, weight loss and exercise. For all the hype, everybody talking about it, it's still a minority of centers that are actually doing it. So the takeaway from this is it's still new, but even between the 2 studies, we could see that things are ticking up in terms of actual utilization. In this study, we then asked people who had at least some understanding of conversational AI to describe its benefits. And they could select up to 3 factors they think are most important, and here are the results. Benefits can generally be categorized as relating primarily to quality or primarily relating to costs, with the understanding that some have both quality and cost components to them. So here we see responses that correspond primarily to quality. Interestingly, the leading answer by far, improved customer experience, garnered the highest number of checkoffs, an answer that's squarely focused on quality. If you ask improved customer experience compared to what, naturally you'll get a wide variety of answers, since each respondent is really saying, well, improved to what I have now or had before. And so, along with improved customer service, we're faster time to intent recognition, which is a blessing for the customer and also saves you time and money. And as stated earlier, we study interactions for content and find that one intent may involve requests for information on the company's product. Another, as we said before, could have to do with account information. Another on the information on other things relating to the product, or perhaps to placing an order on the product. All of these are separate intents that the technology needs to address. Now, the technology uses natural language capabilities to recognize intent from the customer inputs and provide a natural language response that is on point for the customer needs, and avoids customers pounding on the 0 button to get a live agent. And it provides better agent support through pre-screened interactions. That is, having the technology do more upfront so the agents have appropriate context. That's another buzzword in the industry, appropriate context, when they get the customer on the phone. So all of these point to improving quality of the customer experience. The next 3 items, reduction in support costs from faster resolution times, redirect agent resources, that is to say, redeploying high-cost employees to higher value tasks, decrease in the number of calls from self-service, That is better containment in the conversational AI system and thus fewer opt-outs, punching that 0 button to live agents. They're all primarily cost-related items, although they have quality impacts as well. So some interesting results here with a fairly even spread among the cost-related categories. And by the way, our previous study indicated that most companies that use this technology use fewer than 3 intents overall, which indicates there's actually still a huge opportunity for growth per our other study. I mean, just think for a moment about how many intents come into your center on a regular basis, and how many of those are repeated enough to justify conversational AI programming. And when you're looking for a vendor of conversational AI, be sure that they have the scope, the experience, and the reach that can allow you to address a large number of intents, or the number that you need in order to service your clients well now and in the future. Now, having asked about perceived benefits, we asked what people's concerns are regarding conversational AI. And it should be noted, first of all, that almost 1 in 5 respondents have no concerns about conversational AI, and thus presumably are either using it successfully or they feel ready to try it in their centers. So the degree of comfort seems pretty high among a significant segment of managers. The most important concern stems from the newness of the technology. Is it really going to work as advertised? Almost half the respondents were in this category, and my guess is that probably half of our listeners are in this category as well. To this can be added a related concern expressed by nearly 1 in 10 of respondents, that it is an unproven technology. So, you know, they call Missouri the show me state. Well, we've got quite a few Missourians in our survey. So these concerns, of course, are not unique to this technology. All innovative technologies go through phases represented by this hype cycle and life cycle charts, which are well known and are used by Gartner and described by Jeffrey Moore in Crossing the Chasm, etc. So this is to be expected. The market is beginning to move past the early adopters toward the early majority, which is why it's so important really to consider it now so that you don't find yourself behind your competition when it's time for you to adopt. And in fact, the time for adoption for you may be now, depending on your industry. And the early adopters have already done the spade work for you, which is a good thing. You can enjoy the benefits of mistakes made and improvements incorporated. Other concerns involve expense, expressed by 38% of the respondents, and the fear that it will displace human employees, expressed by almost 16%. So now, conversational AI is sometimes thought of as only pertaining to the voice channel, given the word conversational. However, we should be clear that this technology also works for chat and email. It's important to note because almost 4 in 10 centers favor the use of non-voice channels or are equally oriented toward all channels. One of the areas where virtual agent technology can make a real improvement to a key metric is first contact resolution. For those centers that have implemented such technology, they report the results that you see here. 19% significantly increased first contact resolution. Another 57% somewhat increased. These are really significant numbers for a metric that correlates very heavily to customer satisfaction and quality, as reported by managers who have actually done deployments. So this is really important data here. And we all know that first contact resolution has a high degree of correlation with customer sat, but it also helps to bring down costs. So it's one of those wonderful metrics that has 2 sides to it. And here's the impact on Net Promoter Score. Again, very, very significant positive impacts reported by the people who have actually tried the technology. So this is a metric impact that a lot of senior managers will be interested in as well. And here's the impact on agent satisfaction. Again, as reported from managers who have actually deployed the technology. Just note that none of the respondents reported that their agent satisfaction decreased as a result of deployment of the technology. So there's been a concern about agents and this new technology. This is very interesting, and for us, it was kind of surprising findings. Let's keep in mind that human agents are fabulous people for the most part, but they are not infinitely scalable. They can't really replicate themselves on demand. They do get stressed out when not properly supported by technology. They get, sort of bored by repetition. They can't show up in the center at the drop of a hat to help with increased volumes. There's a cost to adding them at home, and there's also a cost to adding an outsourcer to take the extra surge load that you may have. So we all know also that training we give them only sticks in memory at a certain percentage and for a limited period of time. And retraining takes time and money. So all of these are areas that can, have an impact in terms of our bottom line and in terms of our operations, because all of these issues end up in one way or another being addressed by the new technology. So I'll enter conversational AI solutions. There's, all of these areas that we were just talking about. But let's be clear about something, and that is that conversational AI bots are not going to eliminate contact center agents. They do move the human agents up the value chain to more important tasks, because I believe, and history shows, that the amount and the quality of communication will rise in the future. I'd like to tell you a little story here, and that is that when Dr. John Anton of Purdue University and I were talking almost 2 decades ago, we were noting that the call center industry was growing explosively at that point, to the point that over 3% of the working population in North America was working in call centers. And in some employment zones, the percent was around 5%. Those were places like Phoenix and Tampa Bay, which were already having problems with high turnover as people went from one center to another for 50 cents more an hour. Maybe familiar story to some of you on this webinar now. Well, we knew something had to give, and we predicted 3 safety valves at the time. More self-service, offshore outsourcing, and at-home agents. Okay, this all happened. In fact, we were pretty good. But fast forward to today. The fact is that the amount of communication between customers and companies is not going down. It continues to rise. People love to communicate. They want ever more information, ever more service, ever more connectivity with the companies that they like to do business with, and also with governments and nonprofits that they deal with. Any governments or nonprofits who are listening to this should understand that you're right there with everybody else. So this communication is through the voice channel, chat, email, web, text, social media, et cetera, et cetera. And in this mix, human agents will continue to play a really crucial role. There's going to be plenty for them to do as the amount of communication continues to rise. And what they do, however, will be of a higher value to you and to them. They won't get as bored. They'll be doing better things, and they will, we're not going to have wholesale close down of the employment in this industry, absolutely. So conversational AI will grow with this increase in communication and with the increase in competition that you're all going to face. So that's it. For the most part, we have talked about the research, which shows awareness and interest are increasing. The adoption remains at low levels. The reported benefits of actual deployments are really significant, and there's still a lot of room to grow for this new technology. And with that, I'd like to hand things over to Richard Stark to talk about actual deployments and what you can learn from them. Richard?
Bruce, thank you so much. Pleased to be here. We are pleased that all of you can join us today. So we will discuss what conversational AI can deliver. As Bruce mentioned, there's huge opportunities for savings, but also, more importantly, improving the customer experience. So we'll also go over some key concepts, just a bit about the technology, not enough to make you glaze over, as Bruce said, but enough so that you have a sense of its power to help you deliver superior customer service. We'll talk about elements of a project playbook from those who have actually deployed the technology. And we'll go through some examples of actual deployments and the results they have provided to their organizations. So the key about conversational AI is that it needs to deliver an easy and personal customer conversation. It has to be engaging, and you can use conversational AI to quickly understand the caller's intent in a pleasant and conversational way that humans enjoy. Recall what Bruce said about we're all being used to talking to the Alexas and Siris of this world. A well-trained agent also greets the callers, and when possible by name, with an open-ended question. And it also understands the various ways that someone might express the reason for her call. And even if the caller is having trouble expressing it, the virtual agent can engage in a conversation asking the appropriate questions to guide her and find out what is the true objective, as we say, the intent of the call. And now, as Bruce mentioned, we're speaking primarily of voice today. But the same capability that we're going to talk about today can also be deployed or applied to your chat, SMS, and social media interactions. The same knowledge base, the same technology. So what do your customers prefer? When we say preference, we means when offered a choice, customers will choose a free-form conversation rather than pressing numbers or typing on their phones. And as callers become more accustomed to conversational virtual agents, speech-based service will continue to grow. As it provides widely recognized the best possible customer experience for self-service. And this evolution is driven by two things, both advances in the technology and as our older systems reach the end of their useful life, as well as by customer preference. So Gartner recognizes this and predicts a much wider adoption of speech interfaces over the next few years. So then the question comes, why deploy conversational AI to your call center? So while there's no doubt that a good virtual agent improves the customer experience, how do we do this? Well, this includes being able to greet the customer with a personalized service, thanks to the ability of virtual agents software to dip into the back-end databases of your organization, to know more about the caller and also hold a personalized conversation. But as important, the ability to do this at scale. As the demand surge hits, the virtual agents can handle that surge in demand. They can do this at scale with all the callers that come in at the same time, at the same level that's almost one of a human agent. And conversational AI will improve the outcomes of business processes. As virtual agents handle more repetitive, routine tasks efficiently and exchange more information earlier in the call, all this brings operational efficiencies, better cost management, and a great ROI for virtual agents. So, as Bruce mentioned, what were your key concerns in the survey? Will it work as advertised? That is, will it take the input we give it and create a feedback loop to continuously improve responses and resolutions at a high degree of reliability? The technology is unproven. Actually, this impression is behind the times. A few years ago, these were legitimate concerns about this, but today, really not so much. And then the third being conversational AI is expensive. The best way to determine if this should be your concern is to build a business case around it. Looking at the savings benefits along with the costs is an eye-opener for lots of managers. Payback can be very quick, also while increasing customer satisfaction. So as Bruce mentioned, I would mention the technology without making your eyes glaze over. So this is the slide for that. So we speak here about machine learning approaches and semantic modeling approaches, and we have discovered that a combined approach of AI is measurably better. In essence, the most effective approach to virtual agents is to combine the neural network technology with a semantic model approach. And the neural network is really good at, component is really good at ingesting large amounts of front-end information that you and your team feed to the techie who operates the designer tool. Then using a machine learning that gets to maybe about 70% of identification of the caller's intent. Then after this, with our semantic model, we can raise that semantic model for intent identification that is highly accurate. We can reach over 90% accuracy, in fact. This two-component approach is key to success. Neural network sifts through the data lake and provides a semantic model with semi-organized data and identified data patterns that the semantic modeling can use to make the output really good. So I'll stop at that. Hopefully that gives you a little insights into how we make this work and the technology behind it. Now I want to move on at this point and talk about how to proceed. What I'm talking about is a project playbook for deploying conversational AI. So we say start with voice. Why with voice? Because voice can improve customer experience and increase customer satisfaction efficiently by handling the call and reducing hold time for more complex issues. After the voice deployment, you can then extend the same experience digitally to chat, text, and social for an omni-channel customer experience from one unified application. So the first question you want to ask yourselves is, do we know what are the top reasons customers are calling us? And to echo what Bruce mentioned, you then start by compiling a list of these top call types being handled by the live agents in your contact center. Then the team gets together collaboratively and dissects the characteristics of each call type. We do this to determine whether or not one or another call types are a strong candidate for conversational AI automation. Typically, these are the high volume, repetitive calls that are beyond the capabilities of your IVR, yet don't really require the skills of a live agent. When doing so, the agents can now concentrate on solving issues that require empathy, persuasion, and complex critical thinking, which leads to higher job satisfaction, lower agent turnover, which is a huge problem in contact centers, as Bruce mentioned. These agents are also, the virtual agents are also really good at front-end data gathering, which is both time-consuming and frustrating to the live agent and to the customer. So consider applying a virtual agent to these tasks, and once they've gathered this front-end data, use it for intelligent routing to the live agent who can address the customer's needs efficiently. And that's something we'll show you in one of our live deployments today. Now, one more approach about how the project works. First of all, it's an iterative process as you work toward perfecting the system. In our experience, it's highly repeatable, and we've developed a process that's fairly quick to getting to excellence for deployed virtual agents. And after the third iteration at around week 6, the virtual agent is ready to leave the pilot phase and go into production. At this point, after the third iteration, we can achieve around 90 to 95% intent recognition. So what tools do you need for this type of process? You need an environment that lets you see the data set, edit, and correct it. So that's something that we provide. As you also need, when the virtual agent is deployed, you'll receive reports on any specific trouble spots. Understanding, for example, where did the agent's understanding fail or fall short? So your business analyst can correct the training again and redeploy. And this is only possible with a semantic modeling approach, not so much if you only use AI techniques like neural networks. And we at Interactive Media have developed such an environment, and we use it in all our projects.
So I have a question from Jessica saying if this is used instead of an IVR. Yes, absolutely. So this is you can be used both to completely substitute the IVR and doing it in a conversational way, or you can put it behind the IVR if not everything needs to be automated like that with conversational AI, and only do it for certain branches, for instance, to start with. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Livia. Thank you, Jessica, for your,
Sure. Yeah.
your question. So, project success depends on understanding and expecting that deploying conversational AI is new to many organizations. So in addition to the technical issues in developing the virtual agent, there are also many soft considerations. Like all things new, apprehension is expected and common. And another thing to remember is this is not just a customer service thing. All parts of the organization need to be involved and on board. And that's because the data and expertise resides within different silos in the organization. And the more a virtual agent is trained, the better it performs. It is almost certain that in developing a virtual agent this way will provide opportunities also for process improvements as you begin to document these call types and understanding where you need data to support not only the virtual agent and also the live agents. The virtual agent is often the first voice your customer hears. So what does that mean for your brand? What do your customers expect? And how do you want the virtual agent to express your brand? So the opportunities exist for you to give the agent any voice or intonation that you feel really represents who you are. This could be male voice, a female voice, a Midwest accent, whatever is appropriate for your brand. The virtual agent can process data in milliseconds compared to the live agent. The more data your virtual agent has, the better they can address the customer and their needs. So it's important to remember that conversational AI is always an ongoing process. Training conversational agents is just like training your live agents. It is ongoing. But, however, as you train the virtual agent once, it never forgets, it doesn't leave for another job. So training is always incremental to what you've done in the past. So a virtual agent, not unlike a fine wine, only gets better with age. So let me go over some examples of some successful projects that we've deployed. We're going to present these two projects that have been in deployment for several years and have been very successful. It demonstrates that conversational AI can really make a difference in the way customers interact with your organization at any scale. These are two sizable deployments within very different environments with different objectives. The first one we'll review is a mobile carrier, and the other is a government agency that provides social services. In the case of this telco environment, there are many repetitive call types. These make good candidates for conversational AI implementations. In this case, at this organization, we deployed 6 services that previously were covered exclusively by human agents, which was very expensive, of course. And the customer was very interested in exploring conversational AI for one of these use cases to get started. We followed the methodology that I described a couple slides back and achieved some really great results. The objective KPIs for the project exceeded the target. And so then the customer decided to extend the virtual agent coverage to 5 additional use cases. And you see some of these 6 use cases mentioned here. The customer achieved a really great ROI. The virtual agent is far more accurate. It's far more accurate in acquiring certain information than a human agent. So for example, addresses and emails addresses are much easier to collect using a virtual agent. And one technique we use is to send a text message to the caller with what the virtual agent heard and understood. And the caller simply replies with a confirmation, or they can make a correction in that text, which goes directly back to the virtual agent's knowledge base. And so for other services, we're using a multimodal approach. And what I mean by that is the text message doesn't just contain text, but also contains a link to a dynamic web page the caller can click on. And in that web page, they can collect information in that fashion. And this works even while the callers are on the phone. They can interact with the web page by voice and by touch. And this has been a real revolutionary change for the organization, and they've really seen a great improvement in knowledge gathering, information gathering with using these form filling techniques. So the approach that the organization took is the team sat down and identified these call types, the customer intents that were most common, and the subset that were easiest to automate. The team came up with a great customer intent map and a strong list of keywords and phrases associated with the customer side of the conversation and the agent side. These were loaded into the tool and we began the pilot and continued with the iterations until we achieved that 90 to 95% intent recognition. Another use case I want to review with you is a large government agency. In this case, they had a conventional IVR that had over years grown very complex with a huge number of menus to navigate as new services were added. The abandonment rate of this voice call was very high. It was high as about 70%, as the customers were frustrated and not able to resolve their issue. So we implemented, in this case, a call steering done by the virtual agent that understands the intent of the call and routes the call to the correct agent queue. In this case, we processed over 40 intents. So the virtual agent handles a huge amount of information. It's very extensive. And we had excellent results. The abandonment rate has dropped to 6%, and the call qualification time has been reduced by 55%. Later, we introduced a service to manage appointments. And this is completely self-service interaction with the virtual agent. People now can set up, change, or cancel appointments, and specifying the type of appointment they need and the location. Caller satisfaction has soared according to surveys set up by the agency. More than 70% of the people surveyed expressed high satisfaction with the experience. So some of our strengths are our ability to deliver a personalized conversational experience. And we can do this by leveraging your existing data stores and adapt the conversation in milliseconds with the right data. We can use the right interface for any situation. Right? We're multimodal, so when appropriate, we can combine voice with text, voice with graphical interfaces or forms. And we deliver open integration. Because of our telephony heritage, we understand where you're coming from an IVR-based environment, and where you're going. We can work with what you have, leveraging your current IT infrastructure, but also we're future-proof, so we can evolve as you do. We can work with the most advanced speech services, and we deliver a trainable system that can evolve as your needs evolve. And it can be evolved by mere mortals, to not a professional services engagement. So you can quickly update and improve the virtual agent experience on your own. That's what I wanted to cover today for you, and I would like to now open the floor to questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. That was great. And so let's go to the questions now. There's several of them that we have to answer. And the first one I see your list of integrations. We have an automatic call distribution system from a vendor not on the list. Can you work with their system?
Livio?
So yeah, this is Livio. Yes, of course, we can. And we have a lot of experience, in fact, integrating with different contact center software suites. So for instance, the last one we integrated with was with InContact, and it took about a month of for the project. So yeah, absolutely, we're really looking forward to that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Here's a good question for you guys. Okay, why not just use Alexa or Google to provide this virtual agent support before getting to a live agent?
Well, so Alexa and Google are really general purpose conversational AI products. And what this means is that they're not integrated with a back office database of the company providing the service. And also, their rate of not understanding, since they are using neural networks, is much higher. So it really would not be appropriate to just use general purpose conversational AI for that.
So the idea is that you have a situation where they're using just the neural network, so it's a less complete technological.
Yeah. So let me explain. Neural networks are great for a lot of information, really zillions of data points, like scoring the internet. But not the rate of not understanding is still a little bit too much, and typically companies don't have all this information, and with a smaller data set, neural networks are not as good.
Right. Okay. So there also has to be that connection to, and in a secure way, in an appropriate way, et cetera, to your databases in order to be able to make this thing work properly. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Good. Okay, thank you for that question, Janet. And we have one now from Juan, which is, what are some of the biggest roadblocks you have encountered in your customers' organizations? Interesting.
Well, sometimes the key really is to have the whole organization buying into the project. As I said, data, maybe we said, or Richard said, data is kind of all over the place, and sometimes it's in silos, and so we really need to have both executive level and accepting and promoting the project and having this percolate down to different layers. I think that's key, really.
Okay, yeah, I think here's a situation where the business case needs to be not just financial, it needs to take into account the other silos, the other components of your organization. And as with all these things, just put yourself in the position of those folks who might have concerns, et cetera, and then answer their questions. Basically, you know how we deal with objections all the time in our industry. Well, put yourself in that position in your company, and you'd have to design answers for the people that you know will have to be using this or in accord with it.
Absolutely. So I see another question from Jessica that says, have you interacted with organizations that don't have a formal CRM, and how have you handled that? Well, we can do that simply by having more extensive conversation with agents, with managers, and see how things work, and even transcribing recordings of typical calls. So at that point, we have the information necessary to build the virtual agent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that, Jessica. And we have one here from Holly, which is, how should we address customers who complain to the agent that they don't like having to talk with an automated voice before they reach the live agent?
Well, we really haven't had this problem, I must say. But one key also is, so when customers ask a question which is part of the agent understands quickly, it's part of the domain, there's really no problem. Sometimes callers ask questions that are more like general questions, like where do you live? Or are you human? Are you a robot? This kind of things. So after resolving the customer service domain for the virtual agent, it's good to have some out of domain answers in which maybe with humor and things like that, in which the virtual agent can answer this kind of questions.
Right.
But this really eases the experience for everyone.
Yeah, and I guess, this is where we always say, try to answer the customer's questions, when they want it, how they want it, et cetera, et cetera. And the greater part of the population is moving toward being very comfortable with this. You're going to still have some folks who don't want it. And in that case, you opt out and go over to the live agent. And that's okay. It's a smaller percentage as the years go on. And more people are going to be used to interacting with and will in fact probably prefer interacting with the virtual agent.
Yes. So I see another question from Jamie. Would this be recommended for emergency responder service lines with increasing volume? And I would say yes, for a couple of reasons. One is that if the volume increases drastically, people would wait online, wait in queue. Much better to have an initial qualification by a virtual agent. And the second reason is that by having the virtual agent take very quickly the initial data, qualifying the call very quickly, then the human agents in the back will have a quicker time, basically resolving the call.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because if you think in terms of situations, hurricanes, major fires in California, all that sort of thing, you get overload very quickly on these lines. And as we were saying before, human agents just can't scale the way technology can. And even in those cases where, for example, with the flooding in New Orleans, et cetera, there was sort of a coming together of other agencies from outside of the area to help out. Those people are wonderful, willing, but they're not always able to give the answers because they aren't from the area themselves. Whereas if you have a virtual agent who is, that is properly programmed, they'll have all those answers. So I think that's a great question, Jamie. One that, do you have any further thoughts on that?
Well, I have one thought comes to mind is that oftentimes in these kind of emergency response contact centers, the organization is actually learning about the issue firsthand by the callers. So they can begin to develop a map of the issue, where it's taking place, and kind of the scope and scale of the issue through the knowledge being gathered by the virtual agents really quickly.
Right. And the other thing is that part of it is gathering the information on the situation, and there's the connecting with the resource that's going to do something about it. So that's where I can see this helping out a lot as well. Okay, we have one here from Bob. If the caller gets information from the automated agent, but still has to speak with the live agent, what information does the live agent see before they pick up the call? So I suppose this is, callers hate to have to repeat themselves as they get passed from agent to agent and re-explain their issue or need. So I think that's probably what Bob is, one of the things Bob is thinking about here.
Yeah, so once the call is transferred to a human agent, we can basically add anything as attached data to the call. So one thing that we could add is the complete conversation with the virtual agent, because of course we transcribe everything, and everything is a text. And so at that point, the agent can see everything that went on.
Okay, very good. Richard, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that covers it. I think the fact that the agent's going to be informed of what's taken place, before they receive the call, as the person sits in queue, they can be up to speed really as soon as the call connects to them.
Okay, we have another question that's come in, which is, how is the designer involved with the semantic data modeling? Can you provide an example?
Yes. So actually, the way we do it is really with a web-based tool that allows the designer to take the semantic data, which means, for instance, what we call semantic variants that are all different ways for a customer to ask for something, and put it into the tool. And this provides the data set, the knowledge base for the virtual agent. Another thing to do, of course, is this is not the only thing that needs to be done. There's also the design of the virtual agent flow. So as the call comes in, there is the first question, and then as in other applications, even as in IVR, in an IVR application, you decide what you want to ask next depending on what the customer say. So this is basically what we mean with semantic data modeling.
Okay, very good. Let's see, are there any final words of wisdom that we have? Otherwise, we can close out the webinar, but this has been really, really enlightening and a great source of information. Any final words, Richard or Livio?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. It's been great to get a chance to share this information with you, and we appreciate you coming to here.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to, know more, either contact us or contact Bruce, who will be happy to ask us.
Okay. Yeah. No, this is a great area. There's going to be a lot of interesting things going on going forward. And there's going to be a lot of advantages that contact center managers will see from it going forward. So it has to be done right, though. It has to be done properly. So it's got a lot of legs that's going to be going forward a lot in the future. So thanks to everyone for joining. I want to express appreciation to Alan Potcotter for producing this show, and we look forward to future webinars and having your interest in those as well. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you as well.